So I'm Lawrence Lessig. I'm a professor of law at Stanford, and I'm also chairman of the Creative Commons. And we're here in my extraordinarily messy office talking about topics related to creativity and music. So Creative Commons is a nonprofit that was set up with the objective of making it easy for artists and creators to signal to the world the freedom that they want their particular creativity to carry. It's not total freedom. It's not that they would give up all rights associated with their creativity. But many artists recognize that part of the creative process is building on other people's creativity freely without worrying about a lawyer or without worrying about legal liability. And what we wanted to do was to make it easy for them to say that. So our licenses basically mark creative work with the freedoms that run with that creative work. So you might be free to remix the work, you might be free to use it for non-commercial purposes, you might be free to even in some cases use it for commercial purposes, all without needing to ask a lawyer up front. And so by removing the lawyer from the process, the creators can both represent or recognize and protect their underlying intellectual property, but also invite others into the creative process without the fear about legal liability associated with that. So a Creative Commons license is secured by basically going to our website, answering a couple simple questions. So one question is, do you want to allow commercial use of your work? Second is, do you want to allow people to make changes to your work? And third is, if they make changes, do you want to require that they release their creative work under similarly free terms? And those three questions produce a total of 6 core licenses. Once you're given the license, you basically take the code for that license and either put it on your web page, or we have a technology now to make it so you can stamp an MP3 with a Creative Commons license and upload it to an archive so others can get access to it subject to the Creative Commons license. So it's simply through our web page that you primarily get access. Now some sites like Flickr have folded Creative Commons into their interface so that when you upload content into Flickr, you can choose the Creative Commons license that you want, and that's all done from the Flickr side of the story. The same with the blogging software of Movable Type has Creative Commons built into it, so your blog posts are licensed under Creative Commons licenses right away. The first important thing about Creative Commons is that it's artist-based. So it's artists who choose what freedoms they're going to give access to their work for. Some artists choose to give access or freedoms associated with their work because they think it's actually a good way to get their work out there and therefore become more successful. So a non-Creative Commons example of this would be the band Wilco, which when their album Yankee Hotel Foxtrot was rejected by their label, just let it free on the internet under terms equivalent to our non-commercial license. That created such buzz around that album that another label, in fact a label owned by the same parent company that had rejected the album originally, bought back the rights from Wilco, released it as a regular CD, and they sold more CDs from that record than they had sold in any other release that they had ever done before. So that this was a technique for actually increasing the sales of their CDs, not a technique for reducing the income to Wilco. Some artists, though, do this, would release their rights in this way because they actually believe that they would both support art in a certain genre and also support or extend their kind of creative reach. So in the context of Brazil, Gilberto Gil, who's of course one of the most successful and famous Brazilian artists, has been a supporter of a license which we've released called the sampling license, which is a license that says basically you're free to remix this work, you're even free to remix this work for commercial purposes, you just don't have rights to the underlying song. So you're allowed to sample in the context of the computer, digital, laptop music, but that doesn't mean you have the right to sell the music, the original song that I produced. Now Gil wanted to push this license because he believed that if more people were sampling or building upon Brazilian music, there would be a stronger demand for the underlying Brazilian music. So they would both encourage creative remixing of the Brazilian music and also encourage demand for the underlying original creativity. So again, it would be a strategy to benefit both the artists and artistic creativity. What I think we ought to be thinking about is how do we encourage new generations of art? And I'm totally happy if all Creative Commons does is make it possible for the next generation to succeed, because that's something that the current system doesn't actually do very well. Right? The current system, as record label executives will tell you over and over and again, produces a system where the vast majority, 90% at least, of new artists fail under the current system. Right? You sign them up for 7 record contracts and they don't succeed. And so they're basically locked up in these contracts, and yet they can't actually make any money from their creative work. That's not a great system. Might be the best that they could do given the technologies of the 20th century, but it's not a great system. So if we can help fund a different system or support a different system that actually increased the percentage of artists who could succeed, then that would be enough of a success for me.